And you're all set.
We're all ready to go. All right, it's the middle of March, guys. And let me think. Before we start, just brief. Oh, I can't remember if I went over this with everybody last time, but I've come up with a format that I think will work for us. The first 5 minutes will be an open mic for everybody, and we'll go over the homework assignment. And by the way, if you don't want to do homework, just let me know. If you want to do more than one question, let me know. I want this to be fun for everybody, and people who hated school and hated homework, you don't have to do the homework, all right?
Oh,
Then we'll close the mics, and I'll give my roughly 15-minute presentation or so, plus the new assignment for the next time. And then we'll open the mic back up for the last 5-10 minutes for questions. So that's how, until somebody comes up with a better idea, that's how we're going to do it. And I want to briefly start off with a question to anybody. Who heard the wind on Mars?
I did.
Who's that?
It was
Ann?
Melanie. It was Melanie.
Melanie, what did it make you
this is
feel like?
No, I'm just
this one says 20 million.
What did it make me feel like?
Yeah.
It made me feel excited. Like hearing wind on a different planet. It made me feel really excited to know
I
that
know.
we could do that.
I mean,
Mary Lu,
yes.
this is Bob. I've heard the recording as well, both the unfiltered and the one that where they filtered out the noise of the rover itself.
Yeah.
As a professional scientist, to me, that's just incredibly exciting because
Oh, I know.
I have enough physics as a chemist to know how challenging it is to launch something from this planet and actually intercept another planet. I mean, it's the mathematics, the thinking, and then to be able to listen to something from that planet. Sitting in the comfort of my dining room is remarkable.
Right. Almost makes your hair stand up, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Bob, Bob, you said it much more eloquently than I did.
Well, he has that scientific
Yes.
background, right?
Yes, I have no scientific background, but it's just amazing that we have that technology that we're able to hear wind on another planet. Like, it's just amazing.
Now, just out of a quickie off the top of my head, everybody, if that microphone was on the moon, what would we hear?
Silent.
What's that?
Silence.
Why?
Well, there's no atmosphere really to speak of.
There you go. Yep.
Sound couldn't travel.
Exactly.
You can't have sound without a medium for it to propagate in, unlike electromagnetic radiation, i.e. light, radio waves, and so forth, which don't need a medium. Sound definitely needs a medium.
It's all magic, isn't it? Yep.
Well, then how can we hear all those sounds from in Star Wars, you know, when they're shooting each other and stuff in space?
Because that's
fake.
The imagination, the lying. They're lying. They're exaggerating.
They're making it up.
All righty. We got to move on, guys, but before your mics get shut down, let's run through. I was thinking about those old black churches where people do the shout outs to the minister in response, and so I thought this could be like a shout out. And we don't want to spend a lot of time doing this, so let's zip right through. I gave a bunch of people. Now, I don't have the names connected to the answers, so I'm just going to ask the question. Whoever was responsible for that, shout out the answer. And it's all about the Pleiades, which we're going to look at. Well, we were going to look at it very briefly today, but maybe it's all going to be in the answer session here. And the first one was, I think I assigned it to my daughter. Is that true? Oh, she hollered it out already. The Seven Sisters was the nickname. Did everybody get that?
Right, right.
You don't have to look up just your question. All right, who had number 2? What was the Messier number?
I did. The Messier number is 45.
45, and I'm thinking, if I was Messier, I think the Pleiades would have been 1, 2, or 3. How come it took them that long to get around to giving them a number? I don't know. All right, number 3, what was the constellation it's in?
Isn't it in Taurus?
Yes, in Taurus the bull, which we're going to talk about today in a bit. What color are the stars in the Pleiades?
Oh, that was me, and they're hot blue.
Okay, they're a hot blue-white, we could say, blue-white. Okay, very hot, probably because they're very young. Oh, now, how far away were they? Who had that one? Oh, maybe that was Colleen. Anybody? No?
This is Bob. I'm kind of guessing here, but my memory is about 8 light years, something on that order.
No, that's serious. Okay, it's
There it is.
400 light years ago, which
400
means,
light years.
yes. So, though the light that we now see tonight, left those stars around the time Galileo was building that first telescope and pointing it up to the sky and saying, oh, okay, 400 years. Now, how old are they?
I had that one in at 20 million years.
Yes, is that you, Mary Lu?
Yes.
Yes, just about 20 million years old, which as far as astronomy goes, they're babies. They're not, they're teeny tiny youngsters. Think back to the dinosaurs. Remember they got wiped out about 65 million years ago? We'll talk about that sometime in the future too. If they had looked up, no Pleiades. They weren't around that long ago. Okay, Bob, anybody besides Bob find out what the Japanese car was? Okay, Bob, what was it?
It's Subaru.
Yeah.
And you can get a picture of the logo. I think it's on Wikipedia. Just look up Subaru on Wikipedia, and there's a picture of it. And
Oh, right.
we isolated the picture and took a copy to the box of books, and in theory, it's been put up on the website somewhere.
Good deal. Now, if anybody wants extra credit, go out there and find a real Subaru. I'm not sure that they still put the logo on the recent models, but for 10, 20, 30 years they did. So maybe you'll find a Subaru. And so it's sort of like Inspector Morse's Jaguar with the beautiful Jaguar on the hood. So I'm assuming it's somewhere on the hood, but I don't really know.
You mean the Subaru thing? I think it's on the trunk. It's on the back.
On the trunk. Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's not up. I don't think it's up front.
Well, that makes sense. Anybody following can see it, right?
That's right.
Yeah, I think you're right, Bob. I drive a Subaru and I'm thinking, where is that thing? But I think you're right. It's on the back.
Can you see my screen right now?
Yes.
Is it on there?
Mary, come look.
Sure is.
There's a whole bunch of them.
There's a whole bunch of them.
Okay. Now, I cannot remember if I asked this question of anybody. Where do we find the Pleiades?
And then she changed the picture. It says Subaru logo meant, and it's named up there.
There it is.
After the Pleiades. It represents the Pleiades. Yeah. Well, I always call it the Pleiades. Now, what happened to her?
Me?
Yes.
I'm waiting for you all to stop talking. Question, did I give anybody the question where in the Milky Way galaxy we would find the Pleiades or not?
No.
No. Okay. All the open clusters, of which this is one, M45, are in the spiral arms of the Milky Way. That's where new stars are formed. Okay. Now, Bob, why don't you briefly tell us the adventure of the Maori? Because once again, we're focused on the northern hemisphere. That's where we live. When we look up, we see the stars over us. But down under in Australia, New Zealand, right now, what is it here? It's just about spring here. It's just about autumn there. So everything's, as far as we're concerned, are backwards. So Bob, what about the Maori and the Pleiades?
I think it's pronounced Maori.
Maori? I'm
Maori.
sure you know. Yes.
The Maori are the indigenous people of New Zealand, and the relationship between the Maori And the colonialists, i.e. the British, has been better than it has been in most countries, much better than Australia. But in any case, I believe what I saw is that the New Zealand government has in fact now made a holiday dedicated to the Pleiades. And I find that interesting in a way. Of course, everyone likes the Pleiades, but sort of the primary feature that you see in the southern sky that everyone thinks of and is on the flags of both New Zealand and Australia is the Southern Cross, and which is actually quite easy to pick out, about as easy as picking out the Big Dipper. So I was a little surprised to see that, but definitely the New Zealand government has declared a holiday. While we're going on here, I'm going to see if I can find the.
Okay, Bob, I'll just mention that it's also for the Maori. I still say it that way. Sorry, can't get my old brain to change the way I learned to say it. That's the beginning of their new year, which is the beginning of summer. Once again, we see the Pleiades rising probably in December for us, the beginning of winter. For them, it's the beginning of summer down there, down under. So we're going to have to move on, though. Okay, so Bob, you could put anything extra you find on the web page if you want.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to start my talk now, and then you all hang on till maybe 15 more minutes, and then we can open it up again. Well, finally, it has cleared up several nights in a row. The skies were really clear and bright, and the moon wasn't too much of a nuisance. And our winter constellations, the ones we've been looking at, are moving off to the northwest. And in another month or two, they won't be visible anymore till next autumn, late in the night. So if you want to see Orion and Taurus the bull that we're going to look at today, and M45, Pleiades, you better do it in the next month or so, around 9, 10 o'clock at night, before they vanish over the western horizon, okay? So, Taurus, and you probably still have your maps, right, from March? You can find Taurus, the bull, which is a very ancient, one of the oldest constellations we have a record of. And it's one of the constellations of the zodiac. The reason they suggest that it's such an important and ancient constellation is that back in the day, 7,000 years ago, when we were just beginning to switch over to agriculture from hunting and gathering, Taurus, the bull, was, as the astrologers would say, it was there in March at the spring equinox, the beginning of the planting season. And so it was very important as a calendar marker or a sign of the times. It's not in the same spot in the sky anymore. We won't talk about that today because it's kind of complicated what's going on up there. But we will eventually get to that, how constellations move through time, meaning big time, long time, thousands of years, not a lifetime. So for now, though, we still have Taurus, the bull, and the one star we're going to add to our list of stars that we're going to be able to find is the red giant Aldebaran. And it's considered to be the eye of the bull. So if you have your charts, it'll be very easy. If you're going to just go out the next clear night we have and look up, do it around 9 o'clock at night. It doesn't really get dark anymore until 9 o'clock at night. And once again, you can use the 3 stars in the belt of Orion as a guide and have your hand float slightly upward and slightly to the right, and there will be reddish Aldebaran and the V that the stars make that outline the horns of the bull. And anybody who has studied prehistoric or Egyptian art from 4,000 years or so ago, or the rock paintings, pictographs, in North Africa, in the mountains, the cattle from those days, and they're still around, some breeds like that, had very beautiful, long, curved horns. So there's Aldebaran, the I in the V, and then to the upper left goes the V of stars, creating the outline of the horns. Now, let me think. What did I forgot to write that down about Aldebaran? Well, we'll let it slide since I can't remember it. We have one other open cluster to look at before these winter constellations disappear for the summer, and that's the Hyades, Hyades, and they are right smack in the middle of the triangle down by the apex, by the point, near Aldebaran. You can see them on a clear, dark night with your naked eyes, but your binoculars pick them up beautifully. They're a much more scattered open cluster than are the Pleiades, but there they all are, hanging out as a family, you could say, in the V of the horns of Taurus the bull. All right, now the hard part comes. I've been going over and over and over how to explain this. Our first vocabulary word, the ecliptic. And I thought how to explain this. The simplest, I think, is to say the ecliptic is the path that our sun takes against the background stars. Against the background stars. Now we know in modern astronomy, the stars are not stationary. Everything is moving. And over time, 10,000 years from now, the constellations that we see in our sky are not going to look the same. But in our lifetime and in our grandchildren's lifetime, they will be looking the same. So this creates a backdrop, a background. Think of a superhighway, four lanes wide with a median down the middle. Let's say it's a double yellow line down the middle. The ecliptic is that double yellow line in the middle of the highway. And where does the highway go? Roughly from the eastern horizon, up in an arch to the zenith, the high point in the night, or day. It's there in the daytime too. And then settles on down and disappears into the western horizon. Now, it's not exactly east-west and not exactly straight overhead. We are now in the month of March, so if you face east, it's rising slightly to the south of due east, and it's passing over and setting to the north of due west at this time of year. And the high point will also vary throughout the year, and for us, it'll never be straight overhead because we live 41 degrees north of the equator. That's all spherical geometry, which is not such an easy topic to imagine in your mind's eye. So think of it as a path across the sky with the fixed stars in the background. Now, another thing, let me think, where do I want to put this? Okay, let's review briefly that concept we had. It's a model that I think the Greeks came up with over 2,000 years ago, when most people thought of the Earth as pretty flat and definitely not moving, stationary, and everything in the sky went around it. And we know that's not true. However, when we amateur astronomers are looking at the sky, sometimes it's easier to adapt that ancient model because very few of us have had advanced spherical geometry, so it's easier to think of it that way. So think of that celestial sphere, that big globe, sphere, ball that surrounded the Earth and fixed upon its surface on the underside towards us were the stars. And so the celestial sphere is up there, the stars are up there, and the sun is between us and them and is moving on a path between us and them. The other thing we need to know about the ecliptic is that roughly 15 degrees above and below it is what is called the band. That's the rest of the superhighway. Remember, the ecliptic's just the middle, the median, on either side of the 4 lanes, 2 lanes and 2 lanes. That's where you will find the 12 constellations of the zodiac. And of course, ancient astronomy and ancient astrology went hand in hand for many, probably a couple of, well, it's still going on. We scientists disregard astrology. It's interesting, the history of it, but it really has nothing to do with our lives here on Earth. If you're a scientist, you know that, but that's okay. Some people like to believe in it, and they can do that if they want. There's actually, I think, 4 to 10% of our population that thinks we still, American population, live on a flat Earth. So what can you say? Anyway, in that band then, the zodiacal band, 15 degrees north and south of the ecliptic, that's where you will find always somewhere in that band, on that highway, the moon and the planets. Now, just before we go on about what can happen because of that, we're going to use the hand again, Rima. Horses, hands. Remember, you use hands to measure the height of the horse at the shoulder?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Take your hand, stretch it straight out in front of you, and if it's a normal hand with normal fingers, stretch your fingers as far apart as you can. The distance between your index finger and your pinky is 15 degrees. So if you put your index finger on the ecliptic, your pinky is going to measure how far up, turn your hand around, how far down that highway is, where you're going to find the moon and the planets. And if you think about it, have you ever seen the moon up by Polaris, the North Star, or Jupiter, or Mars? Nope. You haven't, because they don't go up that high. They stay along the ecliptic. Alrighty, my last point, turn the page over, is that word we had trouble spelling, occult. How do you pronounce it, Melanie? Are you still alive?
Yeah.
How do you pronounce
Cult.
that? Occult?
Cult. Yeah.
Okay. That's what happens when something like the moon covers up briefly, in passing, a star that's behind it and in its way. And it doesn't, because everything shifts. Once again, we're not going to go into the geometry of it all. Maybe someday when we talk about the moon we will, but not now. Once in a while, there are certain bright stars. Aldebaran is one. Regulus, which we'll look at next in a month, is another. They lie very close to the ecliptic, which means every now and again the moon is going to pass between them and us. And it's called an occultation, if that's how you pronounce it. And there are charts, tables. You people with computers, you can look it up under that word and the star you're interested in. Last year, it was Aldebaran, and I was so excited. I had never seen something like this. And wouldn't you know, it was cloudy. So be aware when you use the tables, I think they use universal time, which means they don't consider daylight savings time. So you have to, take away an hour if it's like next month from what they say. And you have to really be right there, ready, because once again, the moon has no atmosphere. So it's going to be creeping up on Aldebaran, let's say, and it'll be right there on the edge, and then blink, Aldebaran disappears. And then 2 minutes later, give or take a little bit, it pops out the backside as the moon moves on. So it's only a 2-minute event, so you have to be there. All righty, I think there was something else I wanted to say about Aldebaran, but I cannot remember what it was. So we'll let it slide for now, and we can everybody come back on in a minute. Everybody come back on, unmute, and I'm going to give out the assignments for next time, and then we can have questions. All right? How's that, Melanie?
That sounds great.
Okay, is everybody there?
There.
Okay. This is a question for everybody. Okay. Once you find Aldebaran, which will be easy, belt of Orion up to the right, there is that red star, and then the Pleiades. You will find shortly above it Mars. Now, both Mars, a planet, and Aldebaran, a star, are reddish in our night sky. And you should be able to see that, especially with your binoculars. Now, my question is, two parts. Why are they red? Hint, not the same reason. And two, how do we see the red color? So, what makes them red, and how do we see that? That's for everybody. All righty. Now, I don't mean to pick on Bob. And if anybody else wants to do the hardest one, speak up. Who wants the hardest question? I don't hear anybody. They're all hiding in the back room.
Let's hear the question.
Okay, Bob, you're stuck with
It's
this
like
one.
middle school again.
No, it's like my college students. Okay, Bob, you there? Or Ann? You can do it, Ann.
Okay.
You guys there?
Yeah.
Okay.
I lost my
Passover.
picture.
Huh?
Sorry.
Hello, hello. Okay, while they hunt a pencil, the topic next time, because it's almost Easter in 2 weeks, almost Easter, we're going to talk about time in the calendar and lunar calendars and solar calendars and clocks and time. So put on your philosopher's hat. Okay, Bob, you ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Passover. How is that related, if it is, to the equinox and to the moon?
Okay.
The phase of the moon. And because the Jews have a lunar calendar. Rima, can somebody pass this on to Rima if she can't hear?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. What is the Islamic lunar calendar based on? Is it
Okay.
I think it's a little different than the Jewish one. So when is the beginning of their year, and how is it connected to the moon?
Okay.
Okay. Debbie, are you still around?
I'm there.
All righty. When during the Muslim year is the month of Ramadan? And I'm looking for the number more than the What?
You just had an echo.
Oh, okay. I'm looking for which number of the month in the year, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, rather than the name of the month. You can do the name as well, but I really want to know what month it is in the order from their beginning of their year. You got that, Debbie?
I'm not sure. Can you say it again? When during the Muslim year does Ramadan occur?
Yes. What month? The first month, second month, third month? What month?
Oh, okay.
Okay. Jerry and Mary Lu, you ready?
Yes.
All righty. When is the earliest possible date for Easter? Earliest date for Easter in the year. Now, just in case some folks don't know this, Easter is one of those strange holidays that floats around. It's like Thanksgiving. It's not always the same date. The church decided many centuries ago, the Western Church based in Rome, that Easter would fall on the first Sunday, after the first full moon, after the equinox, vernal equinox in spring. Talk about astronomy. So, if that's the case, Mary Lu and Jerry, what's the earliest possible date? Now, keep in mind, I did some research with Rima a few days ago. You're going to run into a couple of possibilities. We're not interested in the Greek Orthodox Church. We're not interested in an ecclesiastical church saying of what the date is, because what the church says
Unknown caller.
and what astronomers, scientists say are two different things. As we all know, when we've studied our history, it took the church 400 years to say, oh, Galileo was right and we were wrong. So we don't go by the church rulings, we go by the scientific. So scientifically, Mary Lou and Jerry, what's the earliest possible time in March or April can we have Easter? Is Colleen here today or not?
She is not.
Okay. Who's the new person? Who was that?
The Babbitts.
The Babbitts.
Babbitts. Are they here?
Yes, we
Listening?
are.
Yes, we're here.
Okay. You find the latest possible date that we can have Easter.
Gotcha.
All right. And Melanie, Rima and I kind of went through this. You can do it, and it's not as easy as you think. We want, historically speaking, going back 100, 200 years, 300 years, what was the most recent, earliest, and latest dates? Oh.
For Easter.
Yes. Because I think it'd be curious to bookend it. You know, how far back was the earliest one from our time, and what's the latest to us? Anybody else out there? I've run out of questions.
I think you got everyone.
Okay. Do I have 2 minutes before we open to questions?
You can have 2 minutes. Sure.
All right. For those of you that are new at this, let's talk very quickly about a night vision.
Are you looking for the answer to the question?
No. This is just something to help you find things at night in the sky.
There's some question. Did you get the answer?
We are lucky here in the rural part of New York State in that our skies are relatively clear. So, am I still on?
You are.
Okay. It's preferable to go out when the moon isn't there. So that's about 2 weeks out of the year, 2.5 maybe. Not out of the year, out of the month. It takes a good half hour to an hour to adjust your eyes to the dark. So don't pop out the door expecting you're going to see the dimmer things right away because your eyes have not adjusted. The other thing you want to consider is your rods and your cones in your eyes. I believe the rods are in the middle. They focus in bright light, see color, and focus sharply. The peripheral cones, unless I have gotten them backwards, Bob, you can yell at me if I did, but I think it's the cones at the edge of the eye that function in dim light. And we only see gray, shades of gray, with those cones. But if we're going out and looking for, say, magnitude 3, 4, 5, or Vesta, which Debbie was hunting for, that asteroid, which was magnitude 6, your rods aren't going to do any good for you at all. It's going to be your cones that work in dim light. And the last hint is, I learned this back in the day when I was a kid and we played Cowboys and Indians, and I was on the Indian side, and somehow I had read that if the Indians were trying to see something in the distance, they didn't stare at it. They let their eyesight float over it. So once again, when you're out there scanning, say, for the Pleiades, don't stare where you think they are. Just let your eyes float up from the belt of Orion through Aldebaran and on, and you'll spot it, probably with your peripheral cones that are working better for you in the dark, dim light. So pick a clear night when the moon's not around and give your eyes a good half hour to adjust. Hopefully you're not down in the town with all the light pollution. Hopefully it's a clear, dry night so there's not a lot of mist in the air. And let your eyes float. Don't stare to try and find something, and it'll pop out at you. Okay, I'm done. Melanie, you want to see if there are any questions?
Yeah, sure. Does anyone have any questions?
This is Bob. Could I actually read something about the New Zealand holiday and the Pleiades?
Absolutely.
Yes. It'll only take about 30 seconds. This came from the Christian Science Monitor Weekly, which is a magazine we get not because we're Christian Scientists, but because it has phenomenal international news. And it gets delivered to our mailbox. So in a section about things happening around the world, they have New Zealand. New Zealand has made Matariki, the Maori New Year celebration, the first public holiday that honors Maori culture. Matariki is the Maori name for the Pleiades star cluster, which rises in the southern hemisphere around midwinter. So we're talking June, July. This historically marks the start of the new year for the mainland New Zealand's indigenous people. Local councils have been organizing Matariki celebrations and raising awareness of the tradition since the early 2000s. But past efforts to recognize the constellation's reappearance as an official holiday have failed. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, Ardern, announced the first official Matariki will be celebrated June the 24th, 2022. And future dates will be determined by the newly formed Matariki Advisory Group. It's in compliance with the Maori lunar calendar. It will also advise on how to celebrate the events, considering regional differences in tribe traditions. And in case you would like to believe that somewhere there's a good prime minister in the world, it's Miss Ardern. New Zealand has had several really effective female prime ministers in the last 25 years.
Mm-hmm. And you've been down there on sabbatical several times, right?
Yes, Anne and I have spent effectively a year of our life in New Zealand in two doses, so to speak. And
right.
Each time we arrived in their summer, that is very early January, and by the time we were leaving, occasionally there'd be frost in June and July and August. Okay? Just thought you might like to know that.
The Tartaglias, by the way, I'm not sure they're still there. I'd heard maybe they were thinking of coming back, but for years, Dr. Dan Tartaglia moved down there with his wife and was a doctor there in, I think, on the North Island. And then maybe they moved to the South Island.
No, you're right. They're on the North Island. I believe they're in a place called Rotorua, which is a very important site for Maori culture. And it's about an hour's bus ride south and a little east of Auckland, the largest city.
Well, you know, astronomy is one of those areas that, like gardening, if you get interested in it, you could spend your whole life and never learn probably a tenth of it. So, more questions, anybody?
Mary Lu, it's Deb. I just have a quick question.
Yep.
So if it's clear out tonight, I can go out and see the moon between Mars and that
Aldebaran.
Yeah. Is that what I'm going to look for tonight if it's clear?
Okay, is it going to clear? I didn't think so, but good luck.
No, I should be able to see the moon in between the planet and.
All right. Oh, that would be interesting.
No,
another one of those, you know, visual comings together, which of course in space they're not anywhere near together, but to us it looks like it.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if you were saying that now is the time to look for it.
Oh, I'm not, you know what, it's been cloudy for a couple of nights. I have a feeling, is the moon, I can't reach my astronomy magazine. I don't know what the phase of the moon is tonight, but I do know that Mars and Aldebaran are very close together, Mars being a few fingers on top of, somewhere on top of, maybe a little to the left or a little to the right of Aldebaran. And by the way, if you look at the star chart, especially the major bright stars, a lot of them you'll notice begin with AL. Well, that's because while the West was going through 1,000 years of the Dark Ages, as it used to be called, the Islamic world, the Persians in particular and the Arabs, were gung-ho astronomers, and they named a lot of the stars, just like the Russians who got to the backside of the moon before we did, back at the beginning of the space race. All those craters on the backside of the moon tend to have Russian names. A lot of the stars have Arabic names. And that's what I was forgetting, and I didn't write it down, so I can't remember, but Aldebaran has an Arab name, but Al means the, like the star, the whatever. So anyway, you might find that interesting.
Thanks, Mary.
Anybody else before we wrap it up, guys?
Just a point of interest. I will be doing a Zoom presentation on waterfalls of the Finger Lakes for the Corning Painted Post Historical Society next Wednesday at 6:30.
Oh, hi, Bob. Wait a second. What's your first name, Mr. Babbitt?
John.
John. John?
Yes.
I know. Okay, now it registered. It didn't quite register there at the beginning. So say that again.
I will be doing a talk on waterfalls of the Finger Lakes.
Neat.
For the Corning Painted Post Historical Society via
All right.
Zoom on next Wednesday, 6:30.
All right. And how do people hook up with that if they want to watch it?
Yes, it's on Zoom.
Yeah, if you go to the Corning Painted Post site, there should be a link for the Zoom.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Miss your wonderful slideshows.
Well, we wait till you see some of the things I'm bringing back from Florida.
All right. Okay.
John, what do you mean Corning Painted Post? The school system there, or?
No, the Historical Society. Historical Society.
So it's not through the Heritage Museum? Okay.
Okay, Melanie, you have any questions or comments about how we're doing this?
I don't. No. Did anyone have any trouble today logging in? Good.
No problem.
Okay.
Perfect.
So the next one is in 2 weeks on the what? The 30th of March.
Yes.
All right, just before Easter. So I'm going to have to do a lot of research to get everything figured out and organized. But if anybody wants to do research on their own ahead of time, I'm basically interested in, primitive societies around the world, mostly, if not all, started using the moon to keep track of time. And it was the Egyptians about 4,000 years ago that said, hey, you know what? We're going to use the sun. And ever since then, we've been trying to coordinate the two systems, and it's not easy. So, and then, of course, we invented the sand, what do you call that, where the hourglass, and finally mechanical clocks and sundials and all this and that and the other thing. So it's quite a fascinating area of study. And once again, you could probably spend your whole life dealing just with it and still not learn nearly everything you have to know. So that's it, I guess, guys. See you or hear you in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Thank you, Mary Lu.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Yep, bye.